If you own a home in the UK, have you ever thought about creating a vaulted ceiling with exposed roof beams? These are sometimes called cathedral ceilings, and they are a serious design statement in any house. I mean, just look at these. The extra height, light and drama. A vaulted ceiling is a wow space and no mistake. If you are new to the channel, my name is Neil and I am an architect based in Edinburgh. I've been altering, extending and building homes since 2009, and I make content showing how this type of work is done. I also offer consultations to homeowners right across the UK who might need advice before starting their own projects. My last video explored ways to make your home look more expensive for less, and I mentioned vaulted ceilings and exposed roof beams, but only in passing because these are complex and expensive. Or at least doing it legit is complex and expensive. Exposing the existing structural roof beams can fall foul of building regulations. If you do it incorrectly, it can cause massive heat loss, condensation, and ultimately it could rot the roof timbers. You could bring the house down and nobody wants that. So I'm going to show you how to do this properly, and at the end of the video I'm going to show you how to fake it. You can get the look for a fraction the cost, without falling foul of the building regulations. I'm not a fan of this way of doing things, but stay tuned to the end and make your own mind up. I'm going to look at this from the perspective of somebody renovating an existing home in the UK, because that's what most of my clients want to do. But the same advice works if you are planning a new build house from scratch. Let's get started. Aesthetics. Let's talk about the look and feel you might want and then move on to how that can be achieved. Let's suppose you own a house built at some point in the last 40 years. Regardless of where you are in the UK, there is a good chance your roof is a prefabricated timber truss. These are manufactured in workshops, transported to site on a lorry, and craned into place. They are quick to build, and time is money for property developers. I've had several consultations this year with clients who wanted to explore the possibility of exposing an existing timber truss, and the first thing to say is, these were never intended to be on display. They're usually made from cheap pine, and the individual elements are joined together using these rectangular metal panels called nail plates. In short, these don't look great in their natural state, but they can be made more presentable. And one way to do this is to lime wash the timber. This is different to regular paint because you can see the timber grain through the lime wash, so it looks more natural. The original yellow timber will become a much more pleasing pale white colour, but keep in mind, most prefabricated trusses are made from treated timber, and the tannin in that treatment can react with the lime wash and turn pink, so you need to bleach the timber before applying lime wash. Now that might sound like a lot of work, but it's nothing compared to what comes next. Cold bridging. Most conventional homes in the UK have a pitched roof, with either slate or tiles on the outside. Assuming the attic space hasn't already been converted, most of these will have insulation just above the ceiling, laid between the joists. These are the horizontal timber beams that form part of the roof truss. If you remove the ceiling, which is easy to do, it's just plasterboard in most of our houses, you will also remove the insulation. You don't want your dramatic vaulted ceiling to be freezing cold or cost a fortune to heat during the winter, so you need to install new insulation, and this is where cold bridging can destroy your roof. Cold bridging happens when a structural element in your home is both inside and outside at the same time. In old buildings, this was common if the walls are made from solid stone or brick. Heat would just be sucked out through the wall, and it cost a fortune to keep the place warm. If you take a modern roof truss and insulate between the rafters, you still have a major problem. The other parts of the truss are connected to the rafters and are part inside, part outside, like in this photo. Those timbers will conduct heat out of the building at a prodigious rate. The colder it gets outside, the colder the timber beams inside, and condensation will form on both the timber and inside the timber. I know it might sound like voodoo physics, but it's called interstitial condensation, and if that happens, it's just a matter of time before fungus attacks the timber and it starts to rot from the inside out. Most people don't appreciate just how much water vapor is floating around their homes. When it's nice and warm inside, you just don't notice it. But your bath or shower, cooking and boiling the kettle, or people breathing pumps a huge quantity of moisture into the air around us. It's invisible, so we don't notice it. But if you've ever lived in a house with single glazing, you will have seen condensation on the glass. Exactly the same thing will happen if you expose roof timbers like this, by just insulating between or underneath the rafters. The outer surface of the rafter are still exposed, so any beams connected to those rafters are always going to be cold. There is a way to solve all of this, to expose roof timbers and insulate them correctly, but before I tell you about that, you should check out the sponsor of this video. Sunflex UK design and manufacture aluminium windows and doors in the UK, including the glazing for these projects with vaulted ceilings. I believe Sunflex offer a great balance between cost and quality, but don't just take my word for it. Check out these videos I made about Sunflex products in my own projects. The videos include the cost of the glazing, and there's a link up here and also in the description below. Warm roof construction. There are two ways to insulate a roof. You can build a warm roof or a cold roof. Now, despite what you might think, a cold roof is every bit as insulated as a warm roof. The difference is where the insulation is placed in that roof. I found these images on the Kingspan website which show the two methods in practice. They aren't paying me. Most insulation companies' products can be used in the same way. A cold roof is far more common in the UK. If you convert an existing loft to a habitable space, the odds are you will use cold roof construction. The insulation is placed between the rafters and also below them. And you can see the top surface of the rafter is not insulated. It's cold, hence the name. But because there is insulation, that's the pink stuff, on the inside surface of the rafter, it's all good. Heat will not be sucked out of the building. The problems start if you have any other timber beams connecting to the rafters, like this. They penetrate the inner layer of insulation, and heat will always be sucked out of the building along those beams. That's why it's called cold roof construction. The structural elements are cold. The way to solve this is to build a warm roof, like in this diagram. You can see the outer surface of the rafter is covered by a layer of insulation. The entire rafter and any other timber beams connecting to it are fully inside the insulation. The structural elements are warm, hence the name warm roof. And around now the penny might drop. In order to expose these beams in your roof, to show off your roof truss and create that vaulted ceiling, you need to strip the tiles or slate off the roof, install a thick layer of insulation onto the outside of the roof, then refit the slate or tiles onto that insulation. Now, aside from the cost and disruption, your roof will get taller. You will also need to insulate around any part of the roof structure at the eaves, soffit or fascia to stop cold bridging. If you only want to create a vaulted ceiling in the living space, you face a choice between raising part of the roof, which will look odd from the outside, or paying to do this across the entire roof, even if you don't want to create a vaulted ceiling in the rest of your house. If your house is terraced or semi-detached, this will make it look distinctly different from its neighbours. Faking it. I said at the beginning I would show you how to fake this, but to do it effectively, you can't use a truss. The rafters must be capable of supporting the roof on their own without any cross members, like in this property. Notice how there are no other beams forming a truss. It's just the rafters on their own. This is possible, but it sets a limit on how wide the roof can be. If your home is relatively small, say a bungalow, it may be possible to replace the roof truss with individual rafters that are really chunky. The great news is that this can be done from inside. A joiner could work their way along the roof, fitting thicker rafters and cutting away roof truss timbers one at a time. A cold roof insulation system could be applied from the inside, so you don't change the external appearance of the house. But it all depends on the size of the existing roof. Essentially, your house can't be more than one room deep, like the one in these images. The deeper your house, the wider the roof, and timber rafters are only so long because trees only grow so tall, and that sets an upper limit on how big they get. But once you've built a freestanding roof structure with no other beams connecting to the rafters, you can then fit fake beams, like this creator, Jenna Sue. You can see her room isn't especially wide, so the rafters are doing all the structural work. No roof truss. Jenna Sue was able to source realistic looking plastic beams specially made for this purpose. They just stuck them to the plasterboard, or drywall as it's known in the States, and it looks like the real thing, minus the cold bridging. If you've watched my channel before, you know I'm a bit of a design snob, and faking it really isn't my thing. But I put the option out there so you guys have all the info. If you are thinking about altering a home anywhere in the UK or buying a house that needs to be adapted to suit your needs, check out the reallifearchitecture.co.uk website. There's a link in the description. It's full of free guidance and blog posts packed with useful information for homeowners. You can also book a consultation with me if you need specific advice about your property. Please read the terms and conditions before you book. And if you found this video useful, please hit the like button. It really helps the channel. And if you want to see more content like this, you should subscribe. I make new videos every week.